We're back again with yet another exciting episode of Talk of the City on Lusaka Radio 97.7 FM. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On this program today, we're going to dive into issues that matter most to our community, and we will deliberately focus more on the proposed constitutional amendment. And it's very much interesting this morning that we have in the studio a constitutional lawyer who is just going to weigh in really and make us be up to date with some of the proposals that government has made as with regards to amending the constitution, what his take also is. Of course, since the time that the Minister of Justice unveiled to the nation the amendments that are being proposed, there's been quite a lot of debate going on, of course, depending on which side one belongs to. But now it will be interesting really to hear from a constitutional lawyer on this issue. Well, that is not the only issue that we're going to look at. We'll also look at other issues affecting the nation. We'll look at human rights in Zambia, the democratic space as well, which some people will have described as shrinking. My guest this morning is a former Malambo constituency member of parliament who is also a lawyer, Honorable Makebi Zulu. Honorable Zulu, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be in a new place. It looks really good.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We're glad to have you. It's actually been a while.
Yeah, it sure has been a while, and this invitation, I don't take it for granted. I know we have a lot to discuss, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Great. And now that we are talking about it being a while since we saw you, there have also been some people that have been interested in knowing what you're up to in as far as your political career is concerned. Like I said earlier in the introduction, you once served as a Malambo constituency member of parliament, but now we don't know whether you are still in active politics and what will happen maybe going forward as we head to the elections in 2026. So let's just talk about your political career.
Well, I wouldn't say, well, it depends on what you define as active politics, because living itself, breathing itself is politics. Being able to provide is politics, so it's all about politics. So everyone is a full-time politician. If you're going to talk about issues of bread and butter, how you're going to provide for the family, what you're going to do to provide for the family, what environment you're working in for purposes of providing for your family, all that is politics.
Well, maybe in this context, we can talk about being part of politics in terms of contesting as a member of parliament.
Okay, in terms of contesting as a member of parliament, I think there's still time for consideration of that. The elections are next year, in August, and so far we're assessing the ground in Malambo or indeed any other place. And nature is not closed.
Okay, very interesting. But
nature is not closed, but I'm actively in politics.
Okay.
Yes.
So during the period that you were or served as a member of parliament, just how was it for you?
I think it was a very good time for me. I got to learn exactly what it is to live up to the expectations of people. I think politics, more than anything, is about managing the expectations of people and playing a role in terms of responding to the aspirations of the people. That's what politics is, responding to the aspirations of people. So the moment you are not seemingly responding to the aspirations of people, the moment people think you're not responding to their aspirations, then they change their mind about you. That's what politics is.
Interesting. There were some sentiments I came across on social media about people who may not fully understand what it means to represent your electorates in the National Assembly. So some people were saying, some members of parliament just go to parliament to sleep, pass time. They just play over there. Nothing really happens. So for you as somebody who was in parliament, is it easy being in the National Assembly? Is it just about having a good time?
It's never easy being in the National Assembly unless you are playing. But when you are in the National Assembly, I think there are a lot of national issues. They're not just restricted to your constituency, but national issues that have to be deliberated upon. Issues of the budget. What is it that has been put in the budget that is going to affect the lives of the people in your constituency as well as in the country. That is one of the most important things to be looked at when one is a member of parliament. The laws that we promulgate when we're in parliament, how are they going to affect the ordinary citizen? How do they make life better for the citizens? All those are important issues that a member of parliament has to take into consideration. And of course, interaction with the grassroots to get exactly what people want and exactly what they aspire, and how best by a legal process those aspirations can be met. It's for that reason that they go to parliament, enact laws that are going to make the environment enabling for the people that we represent to benefit. That is the essence of politics.
Very interesting.
Livelihood.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, that's interesting. Now let's get into issues of the rule of law in Zambia. There have been sentiments that have come across with people obviously looking at the way the law is applied when it's dealing with certain individuals, especially by those that are in charge. When you look at the overall situation that we have in Zambia, how important is the rule of law? Or maybe before we get into that with just the legal background that you have, when we're talking about the rule of law, what are we talking about?
Exactly. Perhaps that's the starting point. What is the rule of law? The moment you, as a people, give yourselves laws, you have an undertaking that what is going to govern our relationship, the relationship between an individual and the state, the relationship between the state institutions, and the relationship between individuals, you and me. What is going to define our relationship? What are going to be the boundaries that we're going to set? You have a constitution that defines the powers of the government, the different arms of the government, how they relate with each other, how they relate with the citizenry. You have different laws that seek to put order, law and order in the community. How are we going to drive our cars if we're going to be on the road? Should we be driving on the left? Should we be driving on the right? Who has a right of way? All those issues come into play. If I own a property, who is allowed to access my property? How can I own a property? There has to be laws that govern conduct. So the laws that exist to govern conduct between individuals, state institutions, the state and the citizenry, or indeed the people, that is what we call the rule of law. It is contrasted from being ruled by decree, for example, where we had kings, and today a king would wake up and say, on a Sunday everybody wears a white shirt. That would be a rule by decree, where someone decides what is going to happen. And possibly that's what most politicians think, that when you are sent to power, whatever you say goes, notwithstanding what the law is. Everything is regulated by the law, and that is exactly what we ought to abide by. So if the law says a certain procedure has to be followed, for example, what everybody would understand is that if the police are going to want to arrest me, and they do arrest me, they will have 24 hours in which to take me to court after my arrest. If they don't, I must be released on bond if the case is bondable, or indeed bailable. If they don't do that and they continue keeping me, it is no longer the rule of law, because the law has stated what ought to happen. But then this individual has chosen not to follow that law. Then there's no rule of law. The rule of law, as it were, is not necessarily that you have to have a law that necessarily, how else can I put it? In the example that I've given you, where a person overstays, what are the remedies that are available to that person? Should they be followed by that person? Who has the duty to enforce those rights? Is the state supposed to enforce those rights? Is the state supposed to ensure that those rights are upheld? And if the state does not do that, what are the consequences of that? But we see in this regime particularly that all those things are being ignored. If the law says we should not be segregative or discriminatory in our approach to things, how are the state actors acting in terms of that requirement, are they choosing particular people whom to prosecute, as is going on this time around?
Well,
and
you
leaving
said,
the others?
you said this is not how things are being done in this regime.
Exactly.
So are you insinuating that...
I'm not insinuating, I'm saying it is a fact, it is the truth that that is exactly what is happening. You have heard of how that a lot of people are being taken to court for seditious practices because they said something that was displeasing to the government. You've heard how that people have been taken to court for supposed use of insulting language, and only those that belong to the opposition are being taken to court for the said use of insulting language. Not in any way that I condone the use of insulting language, but there are those that belong to the ruling party that have been speaking using insulting language, and they've not been taken to court. They've not been taken to task about that. There were those that are from Northwestern Province, those that said they were going to castrate the former president, ECL. There are those that were marching by Drug Enforcement Commission when ECL's children were appearing there and insulting ECL. Those are known people who were insulting. There's a famous guy called Chibokolo who's been insulting, but nothing has ever been done as regards that particular gentleman. But then you have people like Waimi. Not that I condone what Waimi says, but you can't apply the law segregatively. That is going against the rule of law, because it's supposed to be equal treatment of equals.
But shouldn't there be someone that initiates a complaint in order for police, for example, to act on this?
Not necessarily. The police themselves can institute criminal proceedings against an individual. You don't need to have a complainant, because generally the complainant is the people, not necessarily an individual going to the police. If a police sees you committing a cognizable offense, they have the right to arrest you because you have committed that offense. A person can report to the police, but how many times have people gone to report to the police and the police have not acted? All that is what we've been observing in this particular UPND regime, which ought not to be the case. But unfortunately, when it comes to talking about the rule of law, we are far from it. Look at this so-called fight against corruption. Which people are appearing in court? It is only those that were in the Patriotic Front, or those that were seen to be affiliated to the Patriotic Front, or friends of the Patriotic Front, or leaders in the Patriotic Front. There have been issues of corruption in this particular government, which have not been highlighted at all. Look at what the American ambassador told us, that, listen, we gave you money to support you for food. Instead of buying maize at the right price, the prices of maize were exaggerated. We look at the report that has recently been generated, where the suspicious transactions have gone up by over 500%. This externalization of money has gone way, way up. Our economy is suffering because there's serious leakages. What Bali said he would fix, he has failed to fix. He's not fixing at all. In fact, he is the one who's being fixed, because now he has shown himself that he's not able to do anything as regards our economy. So all those things that we can talk about in terms of corruption are being exposed in this particular report that has been given. The suspicious transactions, it means that there's more corruption now than there was in PF comparatively, the statistics that have been released. But who is being prosecuted now? Do we have to wait until there's a change of government before anyone can be prosecuted? We have this so-called Economic and Financial Crimes Court. Who's appearing before those courts? If you look at the list of all those that are appearing in those courts, it's those that are affiliated to the PF or were perceived to be affiliated to the PF that are appearing in those courts. But this time around, no one from this regime, despite the many cases of corruption, is being prosecuted in those particular courts. Look at the Zamsa issue, the issue of the drugs and all. There were a lot of people that are implicated in that. Look at the fuel or oil deal that has been going on. The misconduct of Minister Kapala when he was at Ministry of Energy, where he himself was getting involved in a procurement process, even cancelling tenders, a role which a minister does not have. The evidence is there. A report has been taken to the Anti-Corruption Commission. I remember Emmanuel Mamba went and reported and availed them the evidence. What have they done? Nothing. A lot of things are going on in this regime which are being swept under the carpet. It is for that reason that this time around you see them desperately trying to clamp down on the opposition, because they know that when there's change of government, the chickens will come home to roost.
You are still listening to Talk of the City, coming to you live on Lusaka Radio 97.7 FM. We will give you an opportunity a little later on to interact with our guest this morning by means of asking questions or just sending through your contribution. The number that you're going to be calling is 0966 992770 and 0977 977860. You can also send a voice note on 0977 977860. As we're waiting to get to a stage where we're going to open the line, let's get back to the issue of selective application of the law in terms of fighting corruption and all that. The argument that has been there, that has come through from officials, including party officials of the ruling party. For example, recently, the deputy spokesperson for the UPND, Honorable Elvis Nkando, mentioned that if you haven't seen the law, okay, visit the certain ministers, for instance, that have been cited to be involved in certain corrupt activities. It's basically because there is no evidence to that effect.
You see, I don't think he's the appropriate person to say that. Look at this. We had a complaint over the conduct of the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, where he is said to have received a parcel from the Chinese, which was believed to be money. The next thing is the president who's on a press conference saying, well, yes, I got information to that effect. I called him. He refused. So what can I do? It is not his job to do that. It is for the investigative wings to investigate and give an update to the Zambians to say, in fact, it was not the case. Not Nkando. Because he himself may be a subject of investigations over his conduct or misconduct. So he can't speak for and on behalf of the investigative wings. What we should be saying is that there was an investigation and they found no evidence. Has he said that? He simply is assuming that there isn't any evidence. What does he have to say about Kapala, who himself was involved in a procurement process when a minister should not be? That's an abuse of office. That has not gone away. It will not go away. So what does it mean when he says there's no evidence? I'll challenge him to talk about the Kapala issue. Isn't there evidence that Kapala misconducted himself in that process? Let's talk about this issue of the pipeline from Tazama all the way, the Tazama pipeline. There was $19 million worth of stock in the pipeline. What has happened to that stock when you gave it exclusively to one person to deal with? Who has benefited from that $19 million? If you engage them to clean it up, did they appropriate it for their own use? Was it appropriated to government? If at all it was appropriated to government, which account did the money go in? The money is not said to have gotten into any of the government accounts. That's the $19 million. Who benefited from that $19 million? You have all that. And why did we get to a point where we had exclusivity to a known person who's an associate of the president dealing with that pipeline? Why did we have that exclusivity? Why have we only opened up the pipeline 4 years later to allow other oil marketing companies to be able to transport their fuels to this country? Does that explain why the fuel costs have been up? President Hakainde Hichilema himself had made a very, very accusing statement to say the reason the cost of fuel was high then at 17 kwacha was because there were middlemen that were in between. And if he had come in and if he was to intervene, he would remove the middleman and the price would come to 12 kwacha. Now, since he came in, has he removed the middleman? Or has he become the middleman such that now we're buying at 32 kwacha? What has happened to the middleman that he said he was going to remove so that we could be buying fuel at 12 kwacha? Why is it that Malawi, our very neighbors here, are selling their fuel at 15 kwacha and we are selling ours at 32 kwacha? What does Malawi have? Where is Malawi buying their fuel? All these things are questions that we ought to ask. Do we have a manager in office or a plunderer in office? The things that he said he would do, has he done them? What has gone wrong? Perhaps he needs to address the nation. Like he said, he would be addressing the nation very often, perhaps once every month, to tell us the update of what exactly has been going on. These are very important questions that he ought to respond to. What has happened to the cost of living, the issue of maize? You found Millie Meal going at a pottery 150 kwacha.
Okay, we'll get into that shortly. When you look at these corrupt allegations involving people that are close to the president, because if we're going to talk about ministers, these are people that are close to the president, do you think really there is that political will from the president to fight this corruption regardless of who is involved? Is his fight something that you can describe as being genuine?
Yes. See, I was talking about the military in the context of corruption, and I would want to finish that point in emphasizing the point that it is those close associates to the president that have been engaged in these corrupt deals. When they came in, they found that we had over 1 million metric tons of maize. What did they do? They sold it. Who was buying that maize from FRA? Predominantly the ministers, their associates, and associates of the president. And they announced that they were going to export this maize. They exported the maize. They sold and exported that maize. Isn't that corruption? Isn't that corruption? Where you're going to close the circle. You have the president getting an interest in who buys and who sells the maize from FRA. And when you do that, you are busy stifling the economy, pushing up the price of milling meal, because now your stocks are depleted. You have to buy more expensively from out there. The maize was being sold to Tanzania, now we're buying back from Tanzania. Isn't that corruption? If we are going to sell maize for purposes of buying it back from the people that we sell from, if FRA is going to be asked to sell to close associates to the president, then thereafter FRA is asked to buy from them at a higher price without the stock moving, isn't that corruption? That is corruption, and that is what we should be dealing with right now. And Elvis can today say there's no evidence.
Can you say the fight against corruption as being re-emphasized by the president is genuine?
There is no fight against corruption, and the president knows he's not fighting corruption. He's facilitating corruption. That's what I would say. The issue of giving the pipeline to one person is facilitation of corruption. The issue of selling maize that ought to be kept in our reserves and it being bought back by FRA is facilitation of corruption. That is facilitation of corruption. The Zamsa issue and the importation of medicines from Egypt, that is facilitation of corruption. Listen, the European Union was interested in making sure that we could be able to provide or produce generic drugs from within. So during the Patriotic Front, we got into an understanding that generic drugs, the ARVs, the Panadols, and all those other drugs could be produced locally. And they undertook that they were going to fund that project, meaning that we would no longer need to buy the bulk of the medicines that we buy. The moment UPND won, they put that aside. They put that aside, much to the shock of the European Union and other cooperating partners. So, but why would you want to be buying drugs so expensively when that very amount that you would spend on buying those drugs is sufficient to build you a factory that will be producing these generic drugs? And you would save a lot much more. But the reason we can only say that one would refuse such a progressive idea that we had embarked on is because they would want to facilitate corruption. Only that. And ZAMSA is just one big example of corruption. Look at what is happening now to the issue of power purchase agreements. We had left a program, a nuclear program, where over 100 students were trained. We set up an institute right there in Silver Rest, where we're going to research and be able to come up with a nuclear power plant for purposes of producing energy for the industry, for purposes of making sure that we have power all the time and bring this issue of load shedding to an end. What did the UPND do when they came in? They cancelled the project. What is happening to those students? They have had to go and look for jobs elsewhere in countries that are much more willing to save resources and go into areas that are able to show that beneficiation is going to the very citizens that are there. We are all affected by load shedding. We are all affected by load shedding. Well, maybe community house now is not being load shedded because there's a dedicated line there, but everyone is being load shedded when this could have been avoided by proactive steps. He told us that he would make sure that every province at least produced at least 1,000 megawatts of power using solar. Has that happened? No, it hasn't happened. What was he doing then? He went and recommissioned Kafue Gorge, which was already commissioned under the Patriotic Front government. Isn't that deception? Isn't deception what would term corruption? This government and this dispensation is replete with examples of corruption, except they pry on the ignorance of people, and that should not be the case. People should be given the truth, and let you who is administering the affairs of the state be truthful to the people. You can't manage the affairs of the nation by propaganda and by lies. Who doesn't know that President Hakainde Hichilema is a liar? You can give me 20 statements that he has said in the last 5 years or indeed 4 years, and I will tell you that each and every one of them is a lie. Everything that he promised to do, he has done the opposite of what he said he would do.
Wow. One would still argue a bit with you. Let's talk about debt restructuring, for example. That's something the president talked about. We can talk about getting rid of cadres from our streets, and we've seen that happen. So when you say
let's talk about
majority, about 20 things that the president has talked about,
let's talk about
they've not been implemented, isn't that just failing to also acknowledge the positives that the president has done?
Okay. You think the debt has been restructured? Has the debt been restructured? You're talking about debt restructuring. Has the debt been restructured? Ask Musokotwane. See, they paraded those teachers at the airport to celebrate the restructuring of the debt. The debt has not been restructured. There are still other stakeholders who have not signed for the restructuring of the debt. Call President Hakainde Hichilema today and ask him if the debt has been restructured as he had announced. It has not been restructured. See, this government has been booming all the way. See, the terms of the debt restructuring was such that they were going to treat all parties that were being owed equally. They undertook that they were going to do that. What did they do? You saw what happened at ZESCOM, where $80 million was taken and paid to China. Meanwhile, on the other side, there was an agreement that they would treat everyone equally. In the event that there's some money to pay, they would sit down. Okay, whom are we going to pay? How are we going to pay this? What did they say to run away from that? They said they paid by mistake. How do you pay $80 million by mistake? That was not a mistake. It was intended to be paid in that manner. IMF doesn't believe that they paid that by mistake. They wanted to sing to IMF that they paid that by mistake because they abrogated a clause or a condition that says all parties must be treated the same. You saw that within a week after paying that $80 million, they went to African Development Bank and they were borrowing $105 million. Now, if they hadn't paid that $80 million and they had not, if they hadn't paid, how much would they be asking for from ADB? Only about $25 million. That little money is what they were going to. But we have since gone to borrow much more. They were crying to say the PF had borrowed a lot of money. The time they were coming in, we were owing about $9 billion. Now, how much are we owing? Close to 20 or 20. That is just in this four years that they've been in power. What did we do with the money that we borrowed? We're able to show you the roads that we've constructed, the hospitals that we constructed, the houses that we constructed, the schools that we constructed. We're able to show you that. What has the UPND constructed in the last 4 years with the over $9 billion that they borrowed? What have they constructed? Nothing. It has been a song after song. The only notable thing that we can say that the president did was go and open up toilets on the Copper Belt. He went to Kazungula, commissioned the Kazungula Bridge, which we, as the Patriotic Front, built. He went to Kafue Gorge to commission Kafue Gorge, which we built. He went and commissioned hospitals in districts, which we built. What has the UPND done from the money that they borrowed? Absolutely nothing. It has been a song after song, and President Hakainde Hichilema, who wants to be viewed as the most intelligent person in the room, the best thing that has ever happened to Zambia since sliced bread, he wants to be praised all the time for doing what? For doing nothing. He wants to...
Honorable, sorry to cut you, but in all sincerity, are you saying for the past 4 years that the UPND administration has been in power, they've done nothing?
Tell me what they've done. I've asked you to tell me, you told me about debt restructuring. I've showed, proved to you that they have not restructured the debt because other stakeholders have not signed the debt restructuring. If it was signed, they would be waving it all over the streets and in the papers. They would be doing that. What else did you talk about besides the debt restructuring? You talked about something else. The issue of cadres. Are you sure that there are no cadres anymore? Haven't you seen what's been happening on the streets of Lusaka? Haven't you heard the statements that were being made by the UPND cadres? Would you say that they've gotten rid of cadreism? Would you say that? Are you convinced there's no cadreism? And you don't respond because you agree with me that this issue of cadreism has not ended.
Let me put it on record. Let me put it on record. No, I'm not agreeing to that, but it's a question posed to you.
Remember, I said you are not responding before I said what I said, meaning that you could be agreeing. But to show you that you possibly do agree with me, what happened at the barrier of Nawakwi? What were the UPND cadres doing there? Why were they causing commotion at the burial site? Those that were driving around Lusaka in a rowdy manner, why were they conducting themselves in such a manner? Would we call those angels? We wouldn't. We wouldn't. There are so many people that have been victims of these UPND cadres that are out there.
Let's move on to the cost of living.
Well, the cost of living speaks for itself. Who today can say their life is better than it was yesterday? Who today can say their life is better than it was during the PF? Which commodity can you pick on and say this is cheaper than it was the time the PF was there? The cost of milling is up over 100%. The cost of fuel is up close to 100%. The cost of transport is up. Everything has gone up. All the promises that he made to say you'll be buying your milling meal at 50 kwacha, it's now over 300 kwacha. charcoal from 70 kwacha, now it's at 800 kwacha. You have sugar costing much more. Your salt is costing much more. Your vegetables are costing much more. Agriculture, we expected better agriculture because he said, "Ndine mulimi nzanu, I'm your fellow farmer. I will do this." These bags of, farmers used to get up to 8 bags of fertilizers, 6 to 8 bags of fertilizers. He said he was going to give them much more. He said he was going to give them much more. He didn't. All he did was move the fertilizers that was given to people in Northern Province, where the rain belt is right now, and take it to Southern Province where there's no rain. The bulk of it was moved to Southern Province. Was that promised to the people in Southern Province or to all the Zambians? I think it should be to all the Zambians. And because it was to all the Zambians, has it lived up to the expectations of the Zambians? Not at all. In terms of agriculture, we're at our worst right now. The time PF was there and they talked of climate change affecting our agricultural pattern, he says, no, it is bad leadership, it is poor leadership. It has got nothing to do with climate change. And the next thing you see him, now that he's in government, he's praying for the rains. He's saying that no, there's been droughts. He's blamed climate change. And the US recently told us that they gave us money to mitigate the issues of climate change. And those issues, that money has been misused, abused. And it took Trump to review that we were given that money, which we have not put to use. Now, what leadership has he shown us that he said he had that would improve the cost of living? What has he done? The cost of bread is up now. It is a miracle to have 3 meals in a day. And like he was saying in one radio program when he was in Kabwe, and that gentleman, Shibwalia, should be Shibwalia, also told him that to say, in fact, you are going to be worse. Things are okay. Much to the realization of that prophetic message. Things are worse under President Hakainde Hichilema than they were under President Lungu, if at all you could deem what was under President Lungu worse. He condemned that. He said the cost of living was high. Now, bring him to a radio program and ask him, the time you said the cost of milimi was high, milimi was at 120 kwacha. What do you say now? Is it any cheaper now? You said the dollar would be at 12 kwacha. You would reduce it. How much has it come to now? What has gone wrong? Has your calculator broken down? You showed us certain formulas that you were going to work with, and how that we're going to improve the cost of fuel. What has happened? Father Sarangeti dared to talk about the cost of living, saying, listen, in our compounds, where we come from, what matters? Luto Shiwabuadi. What did the president say? He says, now that man needs to go to school. We are providing free education. He should go there. But he has been proven to be right. The cost of living is so high. JCTR, from time to time, produces reports that show what the cost of living is. It is only going up. It is not improving in any way. If we were to compare the last 4 years and the period when PF was there, the difference is day and night.
Well, probably because PF was in power for more years compared to the UPND, for a longer period of time, rather.
What do you mean? What do you mean for a longer period of time?
10 years, UPND has just been in power for like 4 years.
Yes, but things are only getting worse. They're supposed to be improving. Why were things better under PF and worse with them when they're supposed to make it better than under PF? See, the progression was that their coming in was suggesting that they had better ideas as to how to manage the economy. We believe that this economist, when he takes hold of the reins of power, is going to do abracadabra with his economic degree, and we were going to have a better standard of life. What has happened is exactly the opposite. And we say, okay, You may have gotten this paper. Perhaps you're not qualified to run the economy. Perhaps the economy of Zambia is not a company. You don't deal with the country as though it's a private company where you think you can call all the shots and you're in control of all the variables. If you have now come to a realization that it's not a company and you have failed to run it, perhaps you should move back. Move aside and let people that understand the economic variables, what matters to the people of Zambia. Because it is not, running a country is not like running a profit-making organization. It is not. It is not.
Shouldn't you be offering solutions?
Oh, and
you
of
feel
course,
like the president has failed. But maybe before you respond to that, just a reminder to our listeners that we have opened our lines, and to interact with our guest this morning, you can call 0966 992770 and 0977 977860. We have a caller on the line. Good morning, you're through to Talk of the City. Your name and where you're calling from?
Good morning.
Good morning. Your name and where you're calling from?
This is
Mr. Ngosa, you can go ahead.
Yes.
good morning, Mr. Ngosa. How are you?
Yes. I'm just wondering, the way you are speaking, as if there is something that you did at here, anything at all, that is a motto. Kita jangan menasih gunung gunung. Kami ibu kami menasih dan menasih muat. Kami menasih dan melodi ibu menasih dan ini. Poyu tu ko poyu ini. Untuk latih dengan terus mesti ada apa yang dengan orang muka. Muhammad bandar juga sorry, Muhammad dua pakai Makebi Zulu.
Mr. Ngosa, wind up with your comment.
Yes, I'm winding up. You remember Parliament, Malambo? People Malambo voted you out because you failed that constituency. Now, how can you be talking about the whole country when you failed your own constituency? Sure. It's anything there yourself or in here.
Thank you so much for your contribution. The number you're calling this morning to interact with my guest is 0966 992770 and 0977 977860. Please do make sure to accommodate whatever you have to say within a minute or less in order to give an opportunity to other people. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Your name and where you're calling from? Mr. Hambwiza, you can go ahead.
Yes.
Talk about overflow. I'm saying that in front of our interviewer there, if the government claiming the overflow, because your friend is one of those that we look at the way they are very patient and very clearly in cases that affect anyone who's affiliated to PA. For example, the issue of Honorable Justice Super, they bought his vehicle, which is not from Paris, is a true home. For example, the issue of return appeal, if that was postponed, you will face prison before being taken to court, and you have been kept there, the case will not be on the phone. It's a true blow. We have not known people that are unmarketed associates in terms of being crime.
Please wind up with your contribution, sir.
And that's what we call the work. We know people that have been taken to police cells and they should be giving them police force. We can't work. Thank you.
All right, 0977 977860 and 0966 992770 are the numbers you're calling to interact with my guest this morning, Honorable Makebi Zulu. You can also send a voice note to our WhatsApp number 0977 977860. That is 0977 977860. Honorable, as we are waiting for more calls, maybe you can respond to those two.
Okay, let me respond to Mr. Ngosa. He asked very interesting questions. Mr. Ngosa, the road you drive on when you're coming to Lusaka from Mumbwa, PF constructed that road. You asked me to give you one example, and I have given you one example. And you also say, well, you failed in Malambo, that's possibly why the people voted for you. You see, people will always vote for someone who tells them something that they think they want to hear. And I will tell you that before I went into Malambo, there was no district hospital. There's a district hospital now, which was constructed by the PF. The Msoro area had no hospital. There's a hospital now. We built secondary schools in there. If you compare what was done by the PF and what the UPND has done, the UPND has done zero. It's just like the comparison between what President Edgar Lungu did and he lost the election and what compared to what President Hakainde Hichilema is expected to have done. He's done nothing. And people are saying that President Edgar Lungu was far much better than President Hakainde Hichilema in all areas, in terms of running the economy, agricultural sector, education. PF was by far better than the UPND.
Okay, there was
President Isia was better than President HH. Everybody knows that.
Okay, there was also, I think, a contribution that came in from Mr. Habwezia.
Mr. Habwezia is asking about the application of the rule of law and is giving and citing examples of where the rule of law has not been applied. And that is exactly what we're talking about. I'm glad Mr. Habwezia has been following what has been happening in this country without the lenses of the political party and seeing that things are not happening the way they ought to happen. Rizwan Patel, look at what happened to that gentleman, where he was taken to Lilai, taken from police cells. If you go to Lilai police, look at their occurrence book. It will show that around 23 hours, the police went and took him out of the police. One of the police officers, Stephen Chipungu, the one you saw with a gun the other time, handcuffing that gentleman who's said to have defamed the kiddist, yes, that same gentleman, they went at about 23, got him out of the police cells, took him somewhere in Lilai, fired a shot over his head. The boy was traumatized. They took him to Central Police at Lusaka Central Police at the place where they call Scorpion somewhere there. They beat him up. Visible scars and bruises. The pictures are there to be seen. And all these matters are being pursued, hoping that we could get some justice for him. But instead, what are we seeing? We're seeing the UPND getting consent judgments for people that were never prosecuted, people whose cases knowledge were entered. We have people like Diary being awarded for matters where they were not prosecuted. A whole minister is being awarded by way of a consent for a matter in which he was never prosecuted. And you say they are angels when you are seeing that even those that got you can trace that this vehicle was gotten from the National Assembly. It's the government that paid for this vehicle. You show up and say this is proceeds of crime. Who stole? The government? National Assembly stole? You have all those things that need to be looked at and re-looked at, and you wonder what is going on in the minds of these guys that are there. Is the idea about getting rid of the opposition so that they can perpetuate their stay? You only perpetuate your stay in government by responding to the aspirations of the people, not shutting up dissenting voices, not taking people like Nawakwi to court for saying the truth. You don't do that. 0966992770, 0977977860. You are through to Talk of the City. Good morning. Tauka Bwino Mwaka Bwanje. Tauka Mwaka Bwanje. Zikomo.
Mba Bwino Mayuti Batman, Ikambere Mponi, Maputo government. Bolo wako kipenga mumbavu damu kwa Mungu. Waona Mayuti kukirekelea maji. Sinawa nitakuta watu koto hapa mpakio. Majo nani Maputo, Makebi Zulu suwa ule unga wao na telezi. Tuoneka mkombo ni kulize. Msara eka malaisi wazikezi. Sikangu wakuja katape tuwa masafi ziangarengio yako. Muli marungu tenzokutia salitembeze. Ota buena kumue wa Makebi Zulu sipa mbuyo pano. Kampo sita wasiwa tokako. Kare majara. Kayonda mkabula mkombo ni mkakibele sipungu.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mamake Angela, for your contribution. You're through to Talk of the City. Good morning. 0966-992770. You are through to Talk of the City. Good morning. Fine, thank you. Your name and where you're calling from?
Thank you so much. If you guys got through, my name is Dr. Francis. From Lusaka, Zambia. Honorable Zulu, Makebi Zulu, my brother.
Pawe mnataka mjani?
Kupema.
Sawa.
Politics aside, then allow me to speak on the subject. Okay? So we give a nice and cosmetic promises from our president. It's very bad. Anyone who speaks the truth becomes the enemy of our government today. It's very bad. Out of all the promises, I think allow me to touch one or two things. Okay? Our government today heavily expenditure. Okay? We have the mineral collection, the money spent. Okay, very quickly, change of current, government is spending. Quickly now is what we call constitutional amendment. All these are all aspects of the cost of living. I'm not going to my sister's side. We are trying for the entire country. Surely, we are not another police. In compound here where we are, we depend on power. If the shocking to
Please wind up with your contribution, Mr. Daka.
Allow me to wind up in such a manner. What is your comment, Honorable, over the issue to which the entire country is complaining? We are hearing it up here. They have got enough power, which is telling our neighbors in country, forgetting the people who voted for the government. Thank you so much for explaining.
All right, let's see if we can allow 2 more calls before our guest responds. You're through to Talk of the City. Good morning.
Good morning, son.
But my boss, Malai Dilipe, na machito ya serikali maji ya so. Anataka kudubai mnaye kwa hakuna mvua. Malai anataka 24/7 hours. But both of them now leo. Unga kuna kumtendea hizi kwa kwenda wazendenye. Paka kumenyana. So economy hili kuino. Hawa watu watokepo chape. Mungu naye nao kati. Ngarampo tuone maenda tuendelea basi bakangira.
All right, wind up. Thank you so much. Let's see if we can accommodate just one more call, and then we take the voice note, then we allow our guests to respond this morning. 0966-992770 and 0977-977860. That is 0977-977860 and 0966-992770. You are through to Talk of the City. Good morning. Good, thank you. Your name and where you're calling from?
Yeah, so.
Tinango banana tamu nasi ungaini uzataka pa hite wacha katareza mzango kwa patmati da hite wacha nimakumse dati na liga na nati komisa hii kazi mapale nasira moshi unga hite wacha tizakanisa basi anabira na poza nati poza ya masinida so poza na brana nei ye poza nenda sasa ni bale corruption na ta hizi patata jada na ndo hii ya corruption na hii ya corruption ona ni ndio zanatini aka kujeke hata komiti na huko aka dokta president from 3 years president of this asili cha university sebenarnya dengan drama tadi tidak membawa kuja so awal kita kata kiasa makan jeda no don't even allow it to go in.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning. Honorable, you can respond to those contributions that have come through with majority bordering on the cost of living.
Exactly, and that is the real issue. If no one is telling President Hakainde Hichilema the truth is that people out there are struggling to make ends meet. Amake Angela, Pepani, I agree with you, the cost of living is indeed high. And the truth is, we have a liar for a president. He is a liar, as the same way Francis observed, the same way Oscar observed, the same way Soko observed. A liar is someone who says one thing and does the opposite, contrary to what they have said. And examples are replete. As regards this issue of power, which have been specifically asked, he indeed is the one who says there's no drop of rain in Dubai, and yet they don't have load shedding. So in this country, we have rains. Even the little rain that we have, we should be able to have power. That's what he said. Has he lived up to that expectation? The comments that he showed, even when you go to his page right now, as regards the issue of power, he complained on behalf of the marketeers, the welders, over the 4 hours of load shedding that they were having. And now we are being subjected to 20 hours of load shedding, 21 hours of load shedding, perhaps even over a day of load shedding. Has he forgotten that there is someone who's running a barber shop somewhere? Has he forgotten that we've got welders somewhere? Has he forgotten that we have women in salons somewhere? Has he forgotten that there are women that are supposed to be making fritters somewhere out there? And the cost of charcoal has gone up. Just the cost of energy has gone up. All those issues are issues that have to be addressed. Politics is about bread and butter. That's why this issue of constitutional amendment, how is it going to make the lives of people there better? How is it going to ensure that electricity is available to them? There's nothing that they've suggested that suggests that the lives of our people is going to be improved. So let's concentrate on what is important. How are we going to feed that Zambian who's struggling out there? Those are the things that we ought to be looking at. Soko thinks, I agree with you. Boza Chira Mongako, a president in Wawenye. And obviously we have to do something about that, and that is that in 2026 we must show him the door, that what we put him there for is what he said he would do. Now that he has not done it, he's no longer qualified to hold that position, and he should vacate it. 2026 will be the appropriate time to show him the door.
Let's see if at this point we can also just take a listen to the voice notes that have come through, and then you can respond to them thereafter.
Good morning, Honorable. This is Kevin Chirongo from Wamba Bridge. My question is, what happens to the seat which was declared vacant if Honorable Munia Zulu has been granted bail? What will happen? Will the speaker already declared it vacant? So what will happen? Thank you.
Mwashukeni wa Makebi. Azenda kulosana tuleo kuyaneo shitiku awe ukuteko huu wansana au kwa tukwa kinabanda kuteko wansana kwe omo tubabila miki fuyo kwa teko tushikana ama promise ba promise tapalo chowa kichana luchimo free education. That is section varande income kwa kwa income umuteko wa abantu abanye nokuno ubupira kwa ndani umuteko uke 6 o'clock
kuposhani wa Makebi mauka wamutareta watu mauka awe program ya mwamene bakambira abantu aba president watu abali bawe ni batoza baeche twafuni kuenda mu 2026 stiba funa na bantu bao chanele chibali samutima ngati ukomplena nishiwo oyipa iwe ukomplena chani mukala bwino tingalekelofu chani mumanyumba tivutika na njala mumanyumba nelikala kutendere nona mwamene bavutika bantu isetili na mashopu mwamene tuizo kusebenzera pana manja apa awe msecretion ndalama kulibe bantu bavutika chena njala bantu ba HH 2026 mfika mulonge muyende munatikanira kugera mu State House takupasani nyumba ze Zambia nizimwatikanira ba mdala 2026 mfika ba HH still kufunani kuya bebede.
All right, Honorable, you can respond to those voice notes with a question regarding the Lumezi incident.
Yes, I agree with those sentiments that indeed the cost of living has gone up. And what's much more of concern is that people are, despite the lies that we're being told, no one has gone back to them and said, okay, listen, we did not know that it is difficult to run government. Maybe we are trying out this other formula. No one has ever gone back to the people to explain to them. But as long as he doesn't do that, he will continue being referred to as a liar, and the liar who he exactly is. Kelvin from Luango asked a very important question. See, the Parliament has got procedures as to how they do things. And as regards those procedures, there are rules and conventions that have been developed over time. And in developing these conventions over time, you will find that issues of a member of Parliament being convicted, no seat has ever been vacated or declared vacant where a member of Parliament has been convicted before the period that is allocated for appeal is granted. That has never been done. But to put this in context and possibly an explanation as to why things may have happened this way, remember one of the UPNG cadres before the abduction of JJ was there, posted a comment to say, we are going to Petaoke. Next, it's going to be Lumezi. Now, I've been sitting and thinking, was this in the grand scheme of things, that things should go in this manner? Perhaps Nelly Moti should have waited for the period in which Munia has to appeal. And it should be very clear that there is no hope that he will either appeal or indeed the determination is by a court where there is no appeal. But this was in the subordinate court. He has been given a year. He is not satisfied with the outcome of that, and he has appealed that particular sentence and conviction. He will be applying for bail. Now, I do not want to think that this trend, or at least it will be cemented by this, if he is denied bail, then it will be a trend that has been fixed to say no politician should be granted bail upon conviction. Then they will have set that in stone. But what happened to Munia and the swiftness that the speaker moved to declare the seat vacant shows that indeed it was their intention that it should be declared vacant for purposes of stifling dissenting voices. Munia Zulu never minced his words. If something was being done that goes against the people of Zambia, he spoke against it. How many times has he been punished in the National Assembly for speaking for and on behalf of the people? You know, parliament comes from the root word parler, to speak. We go to parliament to speak. You can't ostracize or punish any person for speaking in the National Assembly. More so, a person that speaks within the precincts of the National Assembly, that should not be a person that should be punished for speaking in the precincts of the National Assembly. The reason there is immunity for a person who speaks at the National Assembly is because a member of Parliament must be free to express themselves. They must be free to express themselves, and there was a realization, the reason there's immunity within the presence of National Assembly is because they realized that there's a chance that one could have wrong information, but it should be spoken anyways for it to be clarified by the government. If one asks a question based on information that they believe to be true and is actually wrong, it is the executive that should come to Parliament and correct that particular position. If you do not give members of Parliament immunity to speak within the presence of Parliament, it will mean that every member of Parliament will be prosecuted for saying something that may not be true, or saying something that they reasonably believed to be true, relied on that information and expressed their opinion. Now, what we are seeing is a situation where people will be afraid to speak now. I will not be surprised if the next target is Binwa Mpundu, because all the vocal MPs have been targeted. Look at the issue of JJ. JJ, over a matter that was prosecuted, convicted, and paid, they came up with that issue again and took it back to court. A person that has already been convicted, a person that has already been tried, being tried for the second time, and you tell me this government follows the rule of law. Now the one whose life is in danger and whose seat is in danger is Mao Sampa. Mao Sampa has now fallen out with the UPND, and now there are all these attempts to arrest him, all these threats for his arrest, T-shirts being printed for protests against him, accusing him of murder of some person somewhere. I will not be surprised if the next person in the next few days that is being arrested is Mao Sampa. I pray they don't do that. They can't stifle dissent. They can't stifle members of Parliament for speaking for and on behalf of the Zambians. You can't have a country where everyone is singing one song. It's a democracy for a reason. A democracy is a marketplace of ideas. Some ideas you may not even like them. Some ideas may not even be actualizable. Some ideas can be mere dreams on the part of a person. Just like we voted for dreams of President Hakainde Hichilema, which are not coming to fruition until even to this day. We know that the idea that we voted for has not worked. Let's try another idea. Same as Parliament. People go there with ideas. They speak their minds. We should not punish them for expressing themselves the way Munir has been punished for expressing himself.
Oh, thank you. When we think about some of the cases that you've made reference to, probably some involving Honorable J.J. Banda,
yes,
that was successfully dealt with,
yes,
in the past and then reopened. So having a situation where cases that we dealt with are being reopened, how is this reflecting on the judiciary? Now,
it is starting with the president. Remember over the J.J. Banda matter, the president, the whole president of the Republic of Zambia, at a press briefing, makes reference to small JJ, makes reference to a case of JJ and says, we have to reopen that case. The whole president making such a statement? Now, if you have a president who's going to make such a statement, and a judiciary that's not so strong, and members of the judiciary that are so afraid of the executive, do you expect it to go any other way? Do you expect it to go any other way? The problem that we have over the JJ matter started with the sentiments that were expressed by the president. You know, when they say when you're a king, you should not speak out of anger, because all those around you will take that as an instruction. And in this particular case, the very thing that JJ is going through right now, the genesis of it was statements by the president, acted upon by his cadres. You remember that after the president said whatever he said, his cadres were busy saying, JJ, you are next, be careful. All those issues. We are coming to Lusaka. If Lusaka people are failed, we are coming to Lusaka. We'll deal with JJ and we'll do with Edgar Chagwalungu. Those were things that were being said and allowed to happen. Anything that happened, therefore, has a blessing of President Hakainde Hichilema. It had his blessing. JJ should not have been taken back to court over a matter that was already closed. That boy was brought back to come and complain. He was followed. There are people who were in Vubwi. I was minister in Vubwi the time those things happened and the time he was prosecuted. I know the story back to back. I have the record of what happened because now JJ is a client in that particular matter. I have the full record of what exactly happened, how that was fined in that matter. You can't then say, okay, this matter, yes, it was dealt with by the subordinate court. Now we're going to give you another charge. You are the ones who chose to give a lesser charge. Why should you want to pursue him on a higher charge when he already has a conviction? Things don't work that way. We can't pursue individuals out of hate like that. The president has to calm down. He should not express hate for an individual. He's a leader. He's attained the highest position in this country. There's nothing more to aspire unless he wants to be God, which he can never be. Rule the country based on what you promised and deliver. Don't punish dissenting voices.
Can you say there is a separation of power between the three arms of government, and particularly between the executive and the judiciary?
I would say that there's now blurred lines that are leading to there being no separation of powers. Look, the president comes and says, we are going to set up a court that deals with economic and financial crimes, targeting certain, we know that this court is targeting certain individuals. And the next thing, the judiciary follows suit. That court is created. Then he says, we are going to be trying them in 5 months. Who's we? Who's we? Why should the president be the one to talk about that? Can't you let the judiciary exercise their functions independently? The moment they came in, all those judges that were transferred, magistrates that were transferred, about 17 magistrates were transferred, and certain people were brought in, other magistrates were brought in. Wouldn't one think that, okay, these ones perhaps have been brought to achieve a particular purpose? We had those 3 judges that were fired. Fired in the middle of a case that he himself, President Hakainde Hichilema, had an interest in. The fastest case ever dealt with in the history of disciplining of judges in this country. He takes up that, and they're all gone. He goes to Livingston during an address to the judges, and he says, if you want your conditions of service to be improved, these are the people that have your money. Let's recover, then we'll improve your conditions of service. If I'm a magistrate, I'm a judge, and I'm trying someone who's suspected to have proceeds of crime, do you think I'll exercise my independence and say, this person is innocent, when in what they have, the property they have, I'm thinking, okay, if I convict this person, that property is sold, my conditions of service are going to be improved. Should the president be that reckless with his words and in his approach to governance? Nelly Muti, on the other side, National Assembly, you can't say there's a separation of power. There's the handwriting of President Hakainde Hichilema everywhere, in the judiciary, as I have shown to you, and now in the National Assembly, as I have shown. Because he is interested. He wanted JJ out, JJ is out now. Those that he doesn't want, he makes sure they're out. Now he wants the Constitution. The same person who was saying that PF was corrupt, PF was this, goes to Chipata. Chavinga is announcing, now we are in a this is very funny. President Hakainde Hichilema at the Nchwala ceremony, when Chavinga announced that he is in an alliance with the UPND, what I would have expected President Hakainde Hichilema is saying, no, you are PF. You were corrupt. I can't be in an alliance with the PF. But he graciously accepted the offer from Chavinga to be in an alliance, meaning that he has no difficulties with the Patriotic Front. All this is individual hate for individuals. Why would a person who all his life has criticized the Patriotic Front for being corrupt accept an offer from Chavinga to be in an alliance with the Patriotic Front? Did that make sense at all? or the plot was to ensure that he obliterates the patriotic front, the real patriotic front, so that he stands unopposed, because he has failed to run the economy, he has failed to run the country, he has failed to lower the cost of living. And now the opposition that President Hakainde Hichilema has is not PF, it's not Tonse Alliance, it's the people of Zambia. These callers that have been calling hold no position in any political party, and they are saying, listen, I voted for this man based on what he said, but nothing that he said has affected my life in any way. He's a liar. And I agree with them, he's a liar. And should we maintain a liar in power? Certainly not.
Does the Chief Justice have a role to play in ensuring that the judiciary operates independently?
See, the Chief Justice has a big role to ensure that the judiciary operates independently. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I do not agree with the manner in which the Chief Justice has been running the judiciary, because he has not shown that he is his own person. He has not shown that the judiciary should be independent as the Constitution guarantees. He should have been able to stand up to protect the interests of the judiciary. He should not participate in an issue that certainly is targeting certain individuals. He should have stood up for his judges. He should have stood up for procedures that ensure that the office of the judge is protected, not the manner in which judges are being punished. Judges have been fired in this government more than any other time from independence till now. Combined, more judges have been fired under President Hakainde Hichilema. To what extent? For what purpose? We can only sit back and wonder. But as time goes, it is becoming much more clearer as to why that has been happening. And we, the people of Zambia, should be the best judges of that. We brought this on ourselves, and we can sort it out ourselves.
What is your take on calls that are probably judges, for example, in the High Court, the Supreme Court, and also in key positions like, not judges, but positions like those of the Inspector General, should be appointed independently, away from the President?
That would be an ideal situation that would perhaps ensure that there is independence, proper independence in the meaning of the word. That would be. And perhaps if they could be considering amendments that go to protect the institutions, amendments, not amendments that go to ensure that he has power to invade much more in the independence of these institutions. Maybe, just maybe, we could come up with what we may say non-contentious issues. But you know, the folly of it all is that he wants to consolidate power to himself. And you have all these proposed amendments that only achieve the purpose of consolidating power, or indeed perpetuating one's stay in power, or indeed granting oneself much more power. Why would you want to have power to nominate more members of parliament? What is the essence? What has broken down in the current system? You don't do that. So all these issues bordering on institutional integrity have to be considered. We should not depend on the goodwill of a person, but we should follow the law as we have given ourselves. Ordinarily, President Hakainde Hichilema should not be interfering in the operations of the police. He should not be interfering in the operations of the Drug Enforcement Commission, or indeed the Anti-Corruption Commission. He should not be. But what did he do? The moment he comes in, he puts them under his office, meaning that everything that they do for and on his behalf. He's a direct supervisor. He can't even detach himself from whatever wrongs that they were doing. So the wrongs that the police are doing, the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Drug Enforcement Commission, the very fact that we are not seeing any members of his cabinet being punished. He is the one who sits back and complains. This one was having a meeting with that one that day. This one got money from that other person that day. But you see what my ministers are doing. Don't just complain. Let the investigative wings take charge. In fact, you have put yourself in charge of those investigative wings. Why don't you tell them to investigate them? You chose to put them under your control. And now you are lamenting about the corruption of your own ministers, the corruption of your own government. You can't lament about that. When the Zamsa issue came out, it says, now we are happy. People have been exposed as to what exactly they do. Heads will roll. Has any head rolled? Not even a finger, not even a toenail. Nothing has happened.
0966-992770, 0977-977860. Good morning. You are through to Talk of the City. Your name and where you're calling from? Hello, good morning. Yes, we can get you. You can go ahead, Mr. Puri, with your question or contribution.
Now, come on,
now, and this government, they will remember the terrible truth about the truth. One day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see if we can accommodate more calls this morning. Hello, good morning. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Morning, sir, your name and where you're calling from.
now, Kachimwene, Maukatian.
So, the president was very high money constitution, which means the behind something constitution we have to but why empower my youth, constitution by people my youth, na disabled, na women. But issue like Congo, but that's why I can go disabled or youth or Daniel, but I can go empower. Then if I you offer me, that's what you barometer. But the president after our coach
Mr. Shimwene, please wind up with your contribution, sir. Okay. Thank you so much for your contribution. 0966-992770 and 097797. Good morning. You're through to Talk of the City. Fine, thank you. How are you, sir?
No. Commonly, Makebi my Marambo with Peter P. Was the number fire from Marambo there, and now there's the current one with Peter P from Nubian. So, from his side, you know, the former road that anything that can come back to power. When the European won by 2.8 million people, and 1 million rejected the ticket, today the crime has come back. But even if you come for a job alliance and the come, European will be moving the people of Zambia without alliance.
Please wind up, wind up.
Yeah, listen, money. The other issue, one is what is supposed to be in growth of economy.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Much appreciated. 0966-992-770 and 0977-977860. You are through to Talk of the City. Good morning. Good morning, sir. Kaunda, your name, Nakwem Tumila.
Naoka mwaka bwanje.
Tukugade, kuna watu wa president wa hakaendo na mabote na shoka. Iwo ni wapi pamagaja na nakachinda na rubita. Mwiri ila imwe. Wana ile mokana wanani penda ziko yote sana lete kukamba. Wa president watu wase kuna monongo shitesta. Nimu market kimandu wa BH market hapo. Big mama market. Sumi watu. Monongo shitesta ya ikwela. Kulipa kutu wa wapanachio mbana jini chote. Mwenye kukuuzila wachilota. Unapenyewa, kuli kururi mpati. Ini kwa minista. Kwa Eastern Province. Ini kiatumene kudandawa. Ilani jake. Dawa jake na kwa. Mwenye kukona marezi. Mwenye machimbi. Kwa newspaper meko mwamu kutisa huko. Mukapadamu.
Dr. Proud, wind up with your contribution. All right, thank you so much for your contribution. 0977-977-860. You're through to Talk of the City. Good morning. We know Nivanan Tulelanda Navena. Okay, Mr. Bwale, go ahead.
Empire wale munshani.
Are you comfortable with the appointment of Amiba? Don't initially our position will change because this is that is pure UPN. I'm not going to ensure exactly your increase. I don't think you are comfortable. Now, without my election, sit down and eat up. The constitution is amazing. The power in being sure to look at them. But President, what they buy, but they go ahead. They want 9 AETC. Then give it to outside.
Please wind up with your contribution, Mr. Wale. Okay, thank you so much. Honorable, you can respond to those sentiments that have come through.
Okay, I'll start with Mr. Wale. Mr. Wale, you're very right when you raise concern as regards the Electoral Commission of Zambia. The Electoral Commission of Zambia is not what we had envisaged it would be, because it's replete with persons that are affiliated to the ruling party. And you have Mangara Zalomis heading it. And she's on record not so long ago when an issue of corruption in the Petauke seat was asked to her. She says, well, both parties were party to it. How can she condone an election to go on in that manner? Meaning that she was saying that this election was not a free and fair election. That is the head of ECZ who is telling you that, and saying that she will not do anything provided that more than one party is engaging in illegal activities. That, for me, says that she's incompetent to run that institution, because that institution is supposed to ensure that all parties that are participating are obeying the code of conduct, are doing so in line with the rules that have been provided in terms of how an election should be conducted. She has condoned an election that is not free and fair and sat back and said everyone is doing it. That should not be the case. That's incompetence of the highest order and should not be allowed. You have a person like McDonald Chipenzi, who we know is an affiliate of the UPND, being part of the Electoral Commission of Zambia. You can't abuse your power to say, because there's nothing you can do about it, I will put my kith and kin in this particular position and you will not do anything about it. That should not be the case. That taints the democratic process that we ordinarily should be having. What we have lacked more than anything is a patriot What we need is patriots who will put the country first and not personal interests first. You can't put people in positions to serve your interests at the expense of the nation. The lamentation of this person is saying, listen, is my vote going to count? If I'm going to vote and we have those cadres at ECZ, is my vote going to count? How are we going to ensure that that vote counts? Because they should not only be impartial, they should be seen to be impartial in the conduct of their business. And being seen to be impartial means that elements like Chipenzi and Zalomis should not be there. Let's give it some semblance of independence. Let's give it some semblance of independence. That is very important. You see, listening to Proud speak, he always has the same things that he says. And he says, Mulungushi, Vazasegula, each market, Vazasegula. Nothing has been done. You're still being futuristic in your approach to things. We're saying, what is it that he said? He said the cost of fuel was going to be at 12 kwacha. How much is it at now? 32 kwacha. Mr. Proud, is that an improvement in the cost of living, in the cost of fuel? He said Milimi was going to be at 50 kwacha, from 112, 117 kwacha. Are you buying it at that price? No, Mr. Proud, you're not buying it at that price. In your transportation from garden to town, are you paying the same amount of 4 kwacha or 2 kwacha that you used to pay? No, you are not, Mr. Proud. The milling that you used to buy, are you buying it at the same price? No, Mr. Proud. The issue of the dollar that was at 17 kwacha and was to be brought to 12 kwacha, are you getting it at 12 kwacha? No, Mr. Proud. It's 29 kwacha now. The issue of fertilizer distribution in the rural areas, are they getting 8, 12 pockets of fertilizer? No, Mr. Proud. They are sharing in medas. For seed, are they getting 2 bags of seed or 4 bags of seed? No, they are sharing in caps, Mr. Proud. That is not what was promised. That is not what was done. Shimpundu said, how are you going to win? 2.8 people voted for UPND. 2.8 people were duped into voting for UPND. I don't think they're still naive to be in a bubble to think that things are still okay. Possibly of that 2.8, you could be the only one, Washimagi, because I know even yourself, in your heart of hearts, even as you'll be voting on that day, the moment you get into that booth to vote, yes, some spirit, if not the Holy Spirit, will overcome you and you will not vote for Hakainde Hichilema, because that would be imprudent of you in view of all the lies that he has taught the country.
Let's quickly touch on the issue of the Constitution amendment.
Yes,
I think this has also been an issue that most of our callers have been highlighting.
Yes.
So on the 26th, if I'm not mistaken, of last month, Minister of Justice, Princess Kasune, reviewed, gave government's position paper on the proposed constitutional reforms and even the roadmap. So about 13 clauses that are said to be non-contentious, with others saying they are contentious. I'm pretty sure at this point you already took a look at the 13 clauses that are being proposed.
Yes.
What's your overall analysis of those clauses? Are they non-contentious, as it has been said?
To start with, who decided that they were non-contentious? Because non-contentious, the determination over whether an issue is contentious or not means that it has to be subjected to scrutiny. You can't, as a government, sit and say, this is non-contentious, so we're giving it to you. No, you need to sit down with the opposition, sit with the church, sit with the CSOs, sit with the headmen, sit with the chiefs, sit with everyone that is concerned as regards the governance of this country and say, what proposals are we making? Get proposals from every one of them. If every one of them says, this issue, we want this amended, we want this amended, and there's a common thread that everyone is saying that that should be amended, then you should. Then it becomes non-contentious. You can't on your own give us a paper and say, well, this is non-contentious. Who told you it's non-contentious? Where is this issue of saying it's non-contentious. Amongst yourselves, you have agreed. See, even the way this whole thing came up. The president says there are lacunas, as he put it himself, in the Constitution. We sat back and said, no, they're not there. Everybody said, they're not there. We can do with what's there. It doesn't go to the very root of governance. And the next thing, we are going to amend the Constitution. The Minister of Justice herself said, no, we are not going to amend. Mwetwa came up and said, no, we are not amending. Then the next thing, the president goes and says, we have agreed to amend the Constitution. But your minister was saying you're not amending. You're two ministers. In fact, the Minister of Justice, who should be leading the pack when it comes to constitutional amendment, is not even aware that you intend to amend. The next thing, you give her a paper and she comes to announce that, in fact, we are amending. So this witchcraft that's going on, where some people don't know and others know, and by imposition, they suddenly become aware and say, okay, we are going to amend. The first thing they talk of is delimitation. And the reason is because the Constitution that every 5 years we're going to review the boundaries and all. It says review the boundaries. It doesn't say that every 10 years you are going to create new constituencies. It says you're going to review the boundaries of wards, constituencies, districts and all. And the reason behind that, and it's important that this is addressed, why did we have such a provision in the Constitution? It's because we have given ourselves a cycle for census for 10 years. So every 10 years, we're supposed to have a census to determine the population of our country. And in determining this population, there may be a need to review the constituencies. So if we're going to review the constituencies, it does not necessarily say that, it doesn't say every 10 years there shall be delimitation, no. But they want people to believe that they're doing it because the Constitution says there is going to be a review. It doesn't say there's going to be delimitation. So don't mislead people by saying the Constitution says there should be delimitation every 10 years. There has to be review. So in your review, you consider the population. Okay, should we go ahead and have much more constituencies? Should we divide some constituencies? Should we create more constituencies? These are questions that you'll be asking. But it also talks about boundaries that have to be dealt with for wards and all. But then they give us this argument to say, well, no, we want constituencies divided just so that we can send more money. What is stopping you from sending more money? Look, if they are saying that there is an inequality in terms of distribution of the Constitutional Development Fund, and they're giving the argument that if we take 2,000 to a constituency, 2,000 kwacha, just for an example, and then we create two constituencies, then we'll be sending 4,000 kwacha, and that will be good for the development of that place. No, you don't need to. If you're saying we want to close this disparity in the idea of funding constituencies that are big and others that are small based on CDF, no, change it then. To create wards, you do not need to amend the Constitution. Let's call it Ward Development Fund. Then we should be funding the wards. We'll be able to get rid of that inequality without disturbing the constituency, as it were. Let's create more wards. Let's have the Ward Development Fund, and we take it to this. We don't need to amend the Constitution for that purpose. And then there's this issue where the president wants to have power to nominate more members of parliament. What is wrong with the members of, with the 8 that has been given by the Constitution? I heard a very laughable excuse to say no, because over time it has been 5% of sitting members of parliament, so it's going to be 5%. It has never been calculated in terms of percentage. It was 10 at some point when the members of parliament were at about 150. With the constitutional amendment, it has come to 8, and it has been maintained at 8. Even when the constituencies were increased, it was maintained at 8. It was maintained at 8. Why should the president want to, in fact, have more? And he wants the power to appoint more, to be taken away from the Constitution and be in a lesser law than the Constitution, because he knows it is easy to change a lesser law. He will change it and say, okay, I'm going to nominate 50 members of parliament. With the arrogance of numbers that they have, he will do that. HH can be trusted. It's a lie. And examples abound. He will lie with a straight face. The same way he lied over KCM. Vedanta is not coming back. And the next thing, I'm proud to announce that Vedanta is coming back. The same way he would say that the Constitution has given power to members of parliament to increase the numbers, the numbers that I can nominate. He will simply increase the numbers to have an advantage in the National Assembly. The essence of having a limited number of nominations appointed by the president is so that the president does not have so much power. There has to be controls, and the controls are that the National Assembly has to reflect the will of the people. The majority that are in the National Assembly will be there. But then they also recognize that amongst members of parliament, there may be those that may not have the technical know-how that the president may need to be able to run the affairs of government, and is given to appoint up to 8. Because if you're going to have a cabinet of 30 and you are able to incorporate 8 people from outside by way of nomination, it means that you're going to make your cabinet much more efficient. It's not for purposes of increasing your numbers in parliament so you can do your numbers, you can do whatever you want in the National Assembly. No, it's for purposes of running cabinet, running government ministries, people with the technical know-how and skills that you may need in those particular ministries. But to want to have this appetite to enlarge your power to appoint this thing, that's the poison that you have put into this whole process. And that is the issue that raises the question over the whole process of constitutional amendment. The idea of the Constitution is created to limit the power of those that are governing, because we realize that if they are made to use power like a runaway horse, there will be chaos. There will be chaos if it's in the hands of people that even can't be trusted with their own words. That will be chaotic. You don't want to do that. So the Constitution will limit the power of those governing in relation to the people and in relation to the institutions of governance that are there. That is the essence of the Constitution. And that essence is not being reflected in these proposed amendments.
When you look at those clauses, the 13 of them, isn't there something, among them that would say is constitutionally necessary?
Like which one? Like which one? You are a Zambian citizen. Which one do you think is necessary? If we're going to go by way of necessity, is it necessary that we should be dealing with the increase of the numbers of constituencies? Or it is necessary that we deal with the issue of the cost of living? Is it necessary that we should be worried about members of parliament saying that no, that we should have, they should serve a term of 5 years? The Constitution says yes, they should serve a term of 5 years. But this time around, they serve a term of 4 years. 4 years, 9 months. That's a period that they're in, because the 3 months Parliament has to be dissolved. It's not like the framers were not alive to that fact. They were alive to that fact. And the reason for giving this 90-day period is so that we have a credible, free and fair election. Now you want to bring in the issue of ministers and saying in any case they should not continue 3 months before. That has already been taken care of. What is it that you're hiding? See, what they used to propagate the time there was butane is that, no, whereas some provisions may be well, the moment we open it up, they will go to other clauses. It just expressed their intention. There is more than meets the eye. The timing is wrong. They can't be trusted. If we're going to go for a constitutional amendment, can we amend the whole Constitution? Can we amend the Bill of Rights? Can we amend the Constitution to ensure that people like Rizwan are not persecuted in the manner that they're being persecuted? Can we amend the Constitution so that people like JJ are not persecuted in the manner that they're being persecuted? The president even dared say, we shall persecute and prosecute. No, it's not your job to persecute, Mr. President. The job of the state is to prosecute, not persecute. That you don't do. So in this particular case, constitutional amendments that we want are ones that are going to put the livelihoods of the Zambians even better. Let's introduce economic and cultural rights in the constitution that will ensure that we do not have shanties. Government is given a responsibility to ensure that Zambians have decent housing. Our government is given a responsibility to ensure that Zambians are fed every day, to ensure that the education is not a favor like they are making it seem, to say, no, you have free education, like they're doing you a favor. It should be a right that one should possess. In the event that I go to a school and they can't admit me, in the event that I am sick and the hospital can't provide me with the necessities that I need, my right to health should not be violated. But this government does not want to do anything that will put responsibility on them towards the citizens, but they want amendments that will give them much more power to perpetuate their stay or indeed to increase their benefit. It should not be for the benefit of those that are governing that you amend the constitution, but for the benefit of the Zambians out there. Let's look at the economic, social and cultural rights, not the amendments that they are proposing.
What is your take on the proposal for the introduction of an electoral system that enhances representation of women and youths, including persons with disabilities? I think this is also one of the issues that has been highlighted with the President on Women's Day, calling on women to back this amendment in order to allow more of them.
You see, when that proposal was made in Bill 10, a number of people, particularly those that were disabled, drove to Community House to petition President Haka in H11 to allow his members of parliament to consider that fact, representation of people with disabilities. Do you know what happened to those that went to his house to protest? They were beaten. People living with disabilities were beaten because he refused. What has changed now? What has changed now? Those people that were living with disabilities whom you beat up at your house, you didn't consider it important then? Why has it become important now? In your structure as a party, who are the persons living with disabilities that you have? In your adoption process, which persons living with disabilities did you adopt? How many youths did you adopt? How many youths did you nominate? Mrs. Mazoka was nominated as a member of parliament from 2021. Tell me if you have heard Mrs. Mazoka say anything in the National Assembly, a nominated member of parliament with no special skill whatsoever that they bring to the table. She's been nominated and put there. What does she bring to the table? Like was rightly put, Gary Nkombo was removed. Has he been replaced with a woman? Has he been replaced with a youth? Has he been replaced with a person living with disabilities? What is it that they are hiding behind these so-called amendments? They are not in good taste. And why now? Why now? Believe me, the moment the 2/3 is met, they will go over and beyond these proposed amendments and do everything that they can just because they can.
With the roadmap in place?
That roadmap should not even begin to be discussed, because a roadmap ordinarily should be able to say, we should have a starting point. We have to hear from you. You should not tell people first what you want to do, then say, we'll go in this direction. Let people tell you what should be done. Collect opinions or views as to what should be amended. Amalgamate those opinions, put them together. From those that you put together, let's see what has been consistently said by everyone, so that you decide which ones are non-contentious. In any case, everything here is contentious, meaning that it fails now, before it even goes to Parliament. All the proposed amendments, all the 13 proposed amendments, people have said they don't want them. The timing is wrong. The roadmap is not inclusive. When you expect to give us a delimitation report today, and the next day you are introducing it in Parliament, the very report that we had recently over the census, it has been disputed by government, by people that are working for President Hakainde Hichilema, saying this census is questionable because we have more voters in some wards in Southern Province. But then the population, which includes children and everyone else, is less. We begin to wonder, how can you have more voters than the total population? There's something wrong. Is this something that we need to rely on? Let's relook at the population census. Or better yet, let's relook at the voters' roll. Why are things happening this way? Was there rigging? Was there some things that were done wrong? Does that explain the voting pattern where you have more people voting? It's like in a house. You can't say that in this house there are 20 people that are living in this house for purposes of getting money if there's a salary. And then when we come to say, okay, we're going to bring food, we come, we find there are 5 people. Where are the other 15? So those voters that are more than the population that are in those 3 wards in Southern Province, where are they coming from? Why has the population increased? Because we're not even counting children and all, and the population of voters is much more, meaning that there's something that has to be seriously interrogated, and that's why we should not rush through this process.
Okay, your concluding remarks as we end this program this morning, and as you respond, I would also just love you to comment on the statement that was made by the MMD leader, Nevas Mumba, that it's not as if anyone would die if the Constitution amendment goes through.
You see, President Nevas Mumba has, for lack of a better term, let me say he's become a joke. Because in that statement he said that I can make President Hakainde Hichilema stay in power for 7 years or 10 years or 12 years. He can't. President Nevas Mumba should know that he can't. Because if in the event that he withdrew from an election, and I think that's an important thing that we need to look at. Why did they put a provision to say that where someone resigns, dies, or withdraws from an election, you have nominations, then in the next 30 days you have an election? It is because they knew that there would be corrupt elements such as this government, what they did in Kala, where a party puts a candidate there. When they put a candidate, that candidate is abducted, coerced, corruptly dealt with, and that candidate 3 days before the election says, I am withdrawing from this election. The idea was to protect democracy and not to allow people like this government to corrupt individuals, taking advantage of their poverty to say, we'll buy you out. How many councillors have been bought out of their positions being told, we'll offer you a job, we'll give you money for a business, you resign so that we can put a UPND candidate? The essence of that provision is to stop you from doing such things. Now, the reason they want that amendment is so that they can freely do it. You have 4 candidates, they pay off 3, 1 comes and says, I'm unopposed. That is not protecting democracy. The essence of that provision is to ensure that if you deal corruptly with one, the party that you've disadvantaged will pick another person and put there, and then you have to go for election. You can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. You will not avoid it. That is for purposes of protecting democracy. Should we remove such a progressive clause? No, you can't. If President Nevas Mumba thinks he will withdraw from a presidential election, of course he can withdraw. In the next 30 days, there has to be another election. But President Hakainde Hichilema, after dissolution of parliament, becomes a lame duck. He becomes a lame duck. He can't run government on his own. He needs a parliament, a national assembly that will pass a budget. Before he's sworn in, he can't superintend over a national assembly. So he will delay himself. And he can't even enjoy being president because time will not last for more than 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, and we're still going through the rigmarole of elections. It will not happen that way. So Dr. Nevas Mumba can come for advice, and we shall advise him.